Someone was coming. Val stepped back into the shadows, unwilling to turn on the invisibility suit and waste the minute she'd spent charging it. She was terrified of being out in the open later and have the battery die. It filled her with all the terror of childhood nightmares when she'd suddenly be naked in public. So, every second the suit could be plugged in was a blessing. "Should we turn it on now?" one quiet man asked another. "Better not. I hear this guy fights like a mad dog. It's not worth the trouble trying to get him into the furnace if he knows he's going to be cooked." "Isn't it obvious he's going to be cooked?" The two workers appeared beside Val, their eyes on Fox. "Everybody thinks they won't. They get it put in the belly of the bull and think, nah, this is just a drill. They're not going to roast me in here." "So they go in there like a frog in the soup?" "More like barons to the guillotine. They don't want to look like cowards in front of all the people watching, but they sure regret it a minute later when the heat comes on." Valentina went pale as a ghost. "What are you thinking?" Priya asked, snapping Hammond out of his reverie. "You look so serious. What are you thinking?" Hammond was silent for a moment, then smiled bitterly. "I'm thinking we kill and die for these people." He lifted his chin at the audience. "And they'll wipe us out as soon as they're won. Like Lenin, they'll line us up and shoot us after we conquer the world for them." Priya frowned. Hammond's jaw began to pulse rhythmically as he pictured it for the first time, standing in front of a firing squad like every victorious communist rebel before him. "They wouldn't," Priya said. "They need us." "Do you actually believe that?" Hammond asked. "Or do you need to?" "There's time to get away," Val thought. "Do what he told me to do. Grab the kids and hop in a submarine while everyone's distracted. I saw how he drove the other one. It wasn't hard. At least a few of the boys will get away. Guy won't. There's no way to save him. Besides, he's a thief. He's a thief and a liar, and he got me into this mess. He's a no-good, dirty, rotten, lying, very handsome thief." One jackal shoved Guy's shoulder, pushing him into a second, who said, "Hey!" and shoved him back. Another flipped the hasp, swung the hatch inward, and made a show of sniffing the interior as if he knew what he was doing. Inside, it was all rived bronze, a perforated floor on cross-bracing, a clean-out slot low in the belly that had been blanked with a thumb-width cover, and 2 cotter pins. There was no interior handle on the latch, no way for a victim to open it. Guy was about to launch into a desperate attack, to at least hurt the men who held him and get them to shoot him instead, so that he might enjoy a quick death. But just as he tensed himself to strike, a sudden intense jolt of sharp pain lanced through him and he collapsed. He had lost all sense of balance and coordination, and raged inwardly at that feeling of helplessness. A fourth jackal behind him grinned, holstering his stun gun, and bent down to help gather up their prisoner and stuff him into the bull. "No!" Val almost screamed, barely restraining herself. The 2 workers still stood uncomfortably close to her, and as long as they were there, she was powerless. Her knees were weak with fear, and there was no way she could fight them. Perhaps she could get the pistol out in time, but cocking it would make that unmistakable noise that would bring them down upon her, with pounding fists and then kicking feet. And then she'd join Guy inside the bull. She couldn't even ask Augur what to do, because they'd hear her speaking. They were so close she couldn't even breathe deeply. The hatch slammed shut just when Guy could move again, only a moment later, frustrating him into a rage. He kicked hard at it, but the hasp had slid into place just an instant before. The audience could be heard outside, laughing at the sound of his kicking. He swallowed a growl, biting back the urge to vent, unwilling to give them any more satisfaction. It was too late. He pivoted once, sat half squat, with his back on a rib and knees to the gate. The metal was room temperature for now. He let his cuffed hands rest on his knees. Outside, jackals tugged on the hatch to test it. A second time, then a third for show. People like to see certainty done 3 times. "Light 'em up!" Stern said. The crowd erupted in cheers. The 2 workers in front of Val moved forward onto the stage and worked the braziers in sequence. Flame frowned oil and bloomed. The air in the circle warmed with a dry push. As soon as they'd taken the stage, Val asked Augur what her options were. It listed 2 emergency measures: deluge pull behind a break glass cover 2 columns over, and dock purge lever 30 feet back on a yellow-painted stand, tagged authorized ops only. A hoist pendant hung down from a rail behind the bull, dead man type, with up and down and a swing control. The bull had a ring bolt welded to the withers, the way to move it on and off the stage. The crane hook hung idle. She thanked the robot profusely. Inside the bull, the heat came on slow but steady. Guy slid the cover off the lace aglet of his shoe, uncovering the handcuff key he'd put there years ago, and quickly freed himself. It took 5 seconds, all of them loud. The heat rose. He wrestled off his fleece, laid it on the floor of the furnace, and knelt on it. He realized he was just stubbornly trying to delay the inevitable. There was no way out of this, and just as the realization set in, he felt true fear, true abject horror, that if Valentina didn't run, didn't make it to the submarine and escape in time, she would die the same awful way. No! He tested the hinge side of the main hatch, bolted outside, but the hinge pins were internal. If he could get the load off them, they'd drift. He felt the heat spread with the sound of like a low kettle hiss. He worked his thumbs along the seam of the hatch and found nothing that would yield. He looked around desperately, finding nothing. Stern lifted his arms again, but no one clapped. Priya leaned toward Hammond. He's not going to make it out of this one. Hammond didn't answer. He watched the bull's hatch. He will, he said quietly. He has to. The Ronin was wondering how he could do it without getting himself put in there instead. But he was vastly outnumbered, under the sea, and with the only means of escape a long run away with dozens of armed men along the way. It was impossible. He had to watch Fox die or die along with him. Inside the bull, Guy knelt on the fleece and felt the heat rise. There was nothing he could do except take the suicide pill he kept in the heel of his other shoe to die without pain. He could make peace with God first, then bite down on the capsule and cheat his enemies out of the satisfaction of his screams. Val slipped sideways until she stood with a vertical column between her and the catwalk. She looked like someone reading the exhibit placard. Her hand slid behind the column, found the brake cover glass. A worker 2 steps away lifted his phone. She paused, adjusted the fall of her borrowed jacket, and smiled the bored smile of staff. The phone drifted elsewhere. "Auger," she breathed, "if I pull Deluge and Purge both, which will save him?" "Deluge will deploy overhead foam. Doc Purge will open the sluice gates from the moon pool." "But will that be enough to put the fire out?" "Negative. It will create a diversion, but the furnace will still be hot." She remembered suddenly the light well that was cracking. It had taken several gunshots and was damaged, but still hadn't shattered. Perhaps a few more would do it. But would that water reach all the way here? Probably not. Then she thought of the Oculus. It was directly over them with the full weight of the entire bay on top of it. A few bullets couldn't put a hole in that, could it? No, they might scratch it, but that's all. But what if she could break it? A wicked thought came over her. What Samson must have felt in the temple of Dagon. "Lord, give me strength. If I die along with these Philistines, it will be a small price to pay. Let me be the one to avenge all the innocent people of this world." And the iron determination of the true believer gave her the calm she needed to think clearly. She closed her eyes and took the same deep breath she had seen Guy take, then whispered, "God, it's me again. I need you to bash your fist down through that dome and drown these sinners. Tell me how I can do it. Tell me how to bring the water down on all of us, because I don't want to live in a world that doesn't have this brave man. If my love has to die, I'll die with him, and we'll take all these hijos de puta with us." And Auger, again misunderstanding, searched for any possible solution and sensed the proximity of a remote transmitter that could activate Seraph 9, the directed energy weapon in a satellite directly over them, which was directly overhead. A radio was now next to it, tuned into the same frequency used by the Coast Guard. With a simple adjustment, the laser on the DEW satellite was moved from the kill zone between the Basalt Sentinels to the Oculus. "I can broadcast your request to someone in possession of a laser device currently aimed at the dome. A human is required to authorize." "What do I do?" Val asked frantically. "Request assistance." She said, spreading the fingers of both hands out and shifting nervously from one foot to another. She couldn't mess this up, but didn't know how to ask somebody to fire their laser for no good reason, least of all in English. "Hello?" "Lord," Guy said. "It looks like this fox ran out of tricks." Sliding the heel of his other shoe aside, he wedged his finger into a niche to pop out the one thing he had hoped never to have to use. High above them, Daphne frowned and put the radio to her ear, waving a hand at Sharon to shut the hell up and stop yammering for a minute. "What?" Sharon asked. "What is it?" "Sst," Daphne had said. Then, into the radio, "Come in." "Can you hear me?" the voice on the radio crackled. "Loud and clear," she replied. A bit of an exaggeration, but so what? She squinted, as if that would make her hear the voice better. She waited impatiently, listening to the lap of waves. "Do you have a laser?" the voice asked uncertainly. "Who is this?" Pause. "Do you have control of a laser?" Not wanting to admit to anything, Daphne scowled and declined to answer. A long moment passed, Val remembering that Guy was about to burn to death, and hesitating wasn't going to help him. Fortune favors the bold. "I need you to fire that laser, please. Now!" "Who is this?" Daphne demanded. The voice sighed. "My name is Valentina Morales. The laser is aimed at Guy Fawkes. Fire it now!" "This is the second time I've prayed to you in, 2 days? Guy said. "I forgot to thank you for hearing me the first time yesterday, so thanks. That all worked out pretty well. Maybe I should have quit while I was ahead." He held up the suicide pill before him as if it were the body of Christ. Sharon squinted at the blue-lit controller. A square lit up that read Calibrate, Oculus Surface. Daphne leaned over her shoulder, eyes bright. "Push it." Sharon's thumb hesitated. What if it's a trick? What if it's not? What did she say her name was? It sounded Spanish. It's probably the girl, the one that looks like a maid, the one that he kissed right in front of us. Why would she want us to shoot him? Probably because he broke her heart just like he did yours. Do it! I don't know. I can't. I don't want him to die all of a sudden. "Fire the laser!" the voice on the radio screamed. Sharon grabbed the radio and asked, "Why?" "Because it's the only way to save him," Guy answered. And in a flash, Sharon made up her mind. He was a swine, and she hated him, but she was his wife. Her thumb smashed down on the button. "I know I've done a lot of bad things, and I'm sorry. But I think what I'm really guilty of," Guy continued, "is a wasted life. If there's any way I can ask a favor, then I beg you, let Val get out of here safely with some of those kids. Let my death not be in vain." When nothing happened, and all eyes were looking for the source of her voice screaming in the shadows, Val used the heel of her hand to crack the safety glass. She slid a finger into the frame and pulled the deluge handle down hard. A lever clanged somewhere on the roof. Val ran over to the yellow stand and threw the purge lever. There are always a few seconds when crowds try to decide whether an alarm is part of the show. A flat two-tone began in the rafters, the kind of sound industrial spaces choose when they need you to move. High-energy lasers can't burn through water. They lose a lot of their strength when they hit the surface, but part of it did make it through to pane 7 of the Oculus. Floor grates stirred, and the Elvii looked down worriedly as cold seawater shouldered up out of the moon pool and onto the deck. Guy put the pill in his mouth, rolled it with his tongue to fit in between his teeth. Foam fell from the rigging in a white rolling sheet, smothering the people beneath it with an angry hiss. A gloss of white spread over bronze and tile and shoes that had never seen a day of work. Donors and pilgrims howled their outrage without thinking to feel fear. Then a pinprick managed to burn its way through the glass and cause the tiniest drip, drip, drip of seawater onto the bald head of an angry man. In the floor, grates yawned and seawater roared up out of the chamber, into the chamber in a blunt, black rage. Val grabbed the hoist pendant and desperately mashed her thumb on the down button. The hook dropped, found the ring, clanged off of it, and swung. She bared her teeth in a snarl, and inside the bull, Guy looked up at the bronze ceiling. Stern screamed from the stage, his voice cutting through the din. "Who authorized this? Shut it down, now!" The boys ran back the way they'd come, shoes splashing. The hook swung again, and maddeningly missed a second time. A third, and Val choked back a scream of rage. A fourth miss. A guard shouted. Finally, the hook clipped the ring. Pressing up, Val lifted the bull 2 inches off the plinth. "Leave that!" a jackal barked, hurrying over. Val swung the load, so the hanging bull clanged against the braziers with a dull, booming note. Guy was thrown off balance, and the pill dropped out of his mouth to skitter across the floor of the furnace. He watched in horror as it bounced across the perforated grid, miraculously not falling through any of the many holes, and hit the far wall. But then his heart stopped, watching it begin its slow roll back as the bull swung the other way. He scrambled desperately after it. Pane 7 hissed like a breath through teeth, then cracked. A white ribbon raced along the curvature, a lit fuse burning its way toward a bomb. A fist-side shard flaked off and fell. Drops beaded along the crack like sweat before a fever, and fell. "The cows!" Jesse shouted. "We gotta let 'em out or they'll drown." The 10 of them ran to the pens where the heifers saw their fear and felt it too. Val swung the bull with the pendant. The jackal lunged. She let him grab for the dead man, but swung out of the way just at the last instant so he'd overextend himself and stumble. She slewed the bull again, another bump against the braziers, the bull gathering momentum. The crack on pane 7 branched. Water surged after the Elvii. In the pens, a heifer slammed a gate welded in a hurry, and Jesse tried to calm her as he unlatched it. The other cows pushed her from behind, and she bellowed. Other gates swung open and heifers flooded out, almost trampling the boys who'd rescued them, and the ones still in pens saw and panicked more. They slammed into the fences, and the weld popped. The cow in front of Jesse saw the opening and went. It took the turn too tight, slid, recovered, and ran again. The others followed, and was almost crushed beneath them. The jackal recovered his balance and wound up a haymaker that would knock Val out. She gritted her teeth, unwilling to let go of the dead man, and hunched her shoulders. Pane 7 made a sound no one who survived would ever forget. Stern watched in horror as a geyser erupted from the glass and pummeled the orchestra seating, snatching donors up and scattering them like chaff. He screamed, turned, and ran backstage, past Valentina and the jackal, to the rear exit. The shock of that slap made people lose balance in knee-deep water, and the crowd finally believed the alarm was real. A dark shape blew past Val and slammed the jackal into the column. She blinked, staring in wonder, trying to see who it was fighting her enemy in the dim backstage light. Then she remembered herself and mashed a button on the pendant. The bull swung over the orchestra like a wrecking ball. It came back, gathering momentum, and banged the crane mast, bucked, and then dropped. Not far, just enough to tear the rigging from its cleat and splash into the water with a heavy gulp. Inside the bull, Guy was battered this way and that, and the heat disappeared between one breath and the next. He felt cold water seep through the clean-out slot and into his shoes. At the far end of the hall, where Mizell had recognized Guy and the crack in the light well spread, a wave crashed into view and tumbled around the corner, sloshing around the concourse, toward the concourse. An instant later, 10 of the Elvii came running, black and white saddle shoes splashing, and the heifers came thundering after them, sliding into the wall, collapsing in a heap, and scrambling to their hooves once more. Donors and staff, who were running from the flood in the theater, skidded to a halt and gaped in the hall at the Encierro coming straight for him. A guard slid along the polished floor, 10 feet on his back. A donor disappeared under a tide of scrambling pilgrims, one of his devil's head cufflinks skittering across the limestone floor. Val's eyes went wide. She let go of the hoist pendant, making a break for the stage, where she took a flying leap out over the roiling tumult. Crashing into the water and sprawling on the teal velvet seating, buffeted by the hard spray, she ignored the pain and frantically scrambled over the seats toward the bull. Guy looked desperately for the suicide pill, finally seeing it roll back and forth near the rising water that bubbled out of the perforated floor. He dove to catch it, rocking the bull sideways, when he landed and letting even more water come rocketing in. Priya, still in shock, watched Hammond charge across the stage to rescue Val from the jackal. She blinked at him stupidly as he beat the man, going from sociopath to full-blown savage, wailing on him again and again in the shadows. Dimly, she heard the crash of the bull into the audience, and numbly watched Val race across the stage to throw herself, with no regard for her safety, into the thickest part of this danger. A reading from the work in progress, The Great Reset, Volume 3, The Fist of God.